Right beside you, chapter 22. You two better behave at Mrs. Randolph's house tonight. I warned my girls Friday morning. I was driving into work so they would get a ride to school this morning. We had just finished washing the breakfast dishes and were preparing to leave. I'll be calling over there throughout the night. Why? Marva asked with her eyes open so wide she resembled a gecko. To make sure everything was going okay, I answered. Both girls huffed out extra separated sighs as they followed me to the coat rack in the living room. Daddy, don't you have more important things to do with your time on a Friday night? Marva asked, like going on a date. And instead of calling to check up on us, why don't you just come over there? I know Mrs. Randolph was like that, Carol teased. I buttoned my coat before I responded. I have news for you two. I'm going out to dinner after work today. With who? They asked at the same time. A very special lady. Marva and Carol glanced at each other with their mouths hanging open, and then they looked at me. The same one you went to lunch with last Wednesday? Carol asked with a self-satisfied smirk. We didn't make it to lunch that day, but she's the same lady. We decided to go have dinner instead. Oh well, I hope she keeps your attention enough so you won't have to call and check up on us every hour, Carol said hopefully. Bundle up, grab those backpacks, and let's get up out of here, I ordered as I ushered them to the garage. I dropped the girls off in front of their school and headed toward the freeway. On the way, I saw several compact cars parked on the street that were almost completely covered in snow. The vehicles that were moving were creeping along at such a slow pace. I was tempted to take my SUV back home and catch the bus after all. If I hadn't told Felicia we can go to the jewelry store after work and that I would drive her home, I would have. I had spent a lot of time last night wondering what went through her mind when I told her I was going to propose to someone. I was glad she didn't ask the name of my fiance because I don't know how I would have wiggled out of that. But I had to ask myself if I had lost my mind. Here I was about to do either the stupidest thing I've ever done or the smartest. I believed what Pam had told me. Felicia was in love with me. However, I wondered if she loved me enough to want to be my wife. I've come too far to turn back, so I was going to ask her to marry me. I just didn't know when it had to be before she left the company, and I didn't know how. I proposed to Regina over dinner, and I done the same thing with Margaret. I wanted this proposal to be more original. I couldn't wait to see Felicia's face when I presented her with the engagement ring that she helped me pick out for my fiance. On the way to my office, I picked up a cup of coffee from the cafeteria. Well, Pam accosted me when I got off the elevator. Well, now, she said, looking at her watch, I was beginning to think you weren't coming in. She pursed her lips and gave me a suspicious look. What are you up to these days? Anything new with you? If that wasn't a leading question, I didn't know what was. Even though I had asked Felicia to keep the ring buying business to herself, I suspected she told Pam anyway. With Pam knowing she was in love with me, there was just no telling what was going through her mind. I didn't stop walking as I replied, same old routine. When lunchtime rolled around, I asked one of the other technicians to bring me a sandwich. I hadn't left my office since I'd come in. The reason for that was I didn't want to see Felicia before evening because I was afraid I'd lose my nerve. However, even if I did buy a ring, I could still back out and she'd never know what I'd been up to. Throughout the afternoon, Pam walked past my office several times, giving me the same suspicious look she'd given me earlier. Each time I was on the telephone or had someone in my office, which was probably why she didn't come in and start up again. I finally called up Felicia at 3:15. She answered on the first ring. "Hello, Richard. Are we still on for this evening?" "I hope so. Do you want to go eat dinner before we go to the jewelry store?" "If you don't mind, let's skip that. I had a super burrito for lunch, so I don't think I'll be hungry again for a while. Besides that, my grandmother is spending a few days with me, and she just called and told me she's cooking dinner this evening. When my granny cooks for me, I never leave the table until I've eaten everything on my plate. Otherwise, she'll be offended and would pout like a 2-year-old." We laughed. "I see. Well, I hope you'll still let me give you a ride home. I hate for you to be out there waiting on the bus. And if it's okay with you, I sure would like to come in and say hello to Sister Lucy. I haven't seen her since last spring when my girls and I ran into you and her at Macy's. And that's a day to remember. She'd been looking for a hat to wear to church on Easter. When you saw us, we already been to 8 other hat stores. Did she ever find one she liked? In the first store we gone to." We laughed again. "Okay, I'll be ready to go at 5, so why don't we meet in the lobby then? I'll see you there." There was only one other customer in the jewelry store when we got there, and he was on his way out. "The snow must really be coming down now. You two look like snowmen," the sharp-nosed woman behind the counter remarked. "I feel like one too," Felicia said. "How can I help you folks today?" The clerk scanned our faces with an anxious look I had become so familiar with. It was no wonder. She was the same middle-aged blonde who had waited on me the other 2 times. Felicia helped me pick out jewelry. Her name was Clarice. "I'd like to look at engagement rings today," I replied. "Oh, well, you've come to the right place." Clarice blinked at Felicia and grinned. "I hope we have something to your liking, my dear." "I came to help my friend choose something for his fiancée," Felicia said quickly as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She was good at hiding her emotions, but I noticed a slightly sad look on her face. That made me feel guilty. I had no idea how long she'd been in love with me. For her to hear that I was going to get married must have crushed her. She wouldn't feel that way much longer. "What price range do you have in mind?" Clarice asked, looking directly at me. When I told her, she pointed to a display in a case in front of us. "Do you know your future bride's ring size?" I glanced at Felicia's hand. "About the same as yours, Val." Her jaw dropped. "I wouldn't know," she said sharply. "I'm sure you're the same size." I cleared my throat and gave her a thoughtful look. "Ma'am, can we take a look at the second tray to the right?" "Absolutely." With an amused look on her face now, Clarice eagerly removed the tray from the case and set it on the counter. It contained 6 rings. All were stunning. I passed up the first 2 and removed the third one. "What do you think, Phil? Is this something you'll select for yourself?" "No." She sniffed and pointed to the ring at the end of the tray. "I like that one," she said with a wistful expression on her face as she admired the ring. "Great choice." Clarice was probably so giddy because Felicia had picked the most eye-catching ring in the bunch. Our 2-carat white gold oval cut halo is very popular. It was a great choice. "Phil, do you mind trying it on?" I didn't wait for her to answer. I slipped it onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. "That's nice." "It's gorgeous," Felicia said in a low tone. I held her hand up and stared at it for about 8 seconds. "We have a few more in your price range," Clarice said. One moment, please." She dashed to her back room and returned less than a minute later with another tray, one with twice as many rings. Felicia spent the next 20 minutes inspecting each one. When she finally chose one, it was the first ring she had liked. I winked at Clarice. "I'll take this one." "Mr. Grimes, are you sure? You don't want to look at any others or go home and think about it? You're spending a lot of money, so I want you to be sure." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "Please charge it to my account." Felicia and I didn't speak again until we left the store. When we got outside, I placed my arm around her shoulder and steered her to our office parking garage. "Thanks for helping me out again. You don't know how much this means to me." "Thanks, I'm glad I could help you again, but I have to say, I don't think there are too many men who ask another woman to choose a ring for their fiancé." She chuckled. "This was fun, and I'm glad you asked me. Well, I'm not that good at selecting things for anybody other than myself. You wouldn't believe how many times my girls and almost everybody else in my family have made me return something because it's not to their liking. My grandmother is the same way. You could offer her the Hope diamond and she preferred something you pick up at a carnival." I guffawed and tightened my arm around her shoulder. She felt so good. Looking at the street, I have a feeling it's good to be a tough ride home. "You're right. Richard, I know it's none of my business, but are you marrying Regina Dobbins? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to." "No, I'm not marrying Regina. You and you and everybody else will meet her soon." Like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Bye bye.